Thank you very much for joining the Early Days of Micromobility podcast. This is a special podcast edition about the very important vote that the people of Paris will have to conduct in a few weeks on the 2nd of April. And I'm very honored to have you represent Dott here on the podcast and share your side of the story. So thank you very much, Matthieu, for joining me.
Thank you, Constantine. Very happy to be here and talking with you about micromobility and Dott.
I would like to know a little bit about your background, why you joined this micromobility industry, because it's a fairly new industry. However, it solves an issue that has been around for many decades, right? So I would like to know a bit about your background shortly and why you joined Dott, because there are many options of great companies in this industry, right? But Dott is still a bit different the way they operate, I personally think. So.
Me too. That's why we created the company, actually. So I spent 10 years in the advertising industry, working at Publicis. And then I joined the shared mobility in 2015, first working at Uber, then spending some time at Sea Bubbles. It was the early stage startup to create a concept of a flying water taxi. And then joining Ofo, Chinese bike sharing company, where I met Henri and Maxime. And then with a few other guys, we decided to create Dott. So Henri and Maxime are the two co-founders, and then we were around 10 people. So it was in October 2018. So 4 years and a half ago. It was only 20 people in a room between Amsterdam and Paris. And now we are around 500 people. So great journey so far.
Your experience and work at Uber and at Ofo, was that in Paris as well? Because I know Uber, the taxis had some issues as well in Paris. And I think Ofo as well later on might have had some issues in Paris. And now we are at the point in the micromobility industry where we are also encountering some issues in Paris. So I guess it's not your first time at a pivotal moment, I guess.
Yeah, quite used to the crisis management for many different reasons, actually. So it was not the same reasons. Uber, it was in 2015, 2016 around. There were a fight with taxi, with politicians as well. Quite interesting to learn on this. But in the end, I think, very different topics between exactly. Uber and micromobility today.
Before we dive into the key aspect of the podcast, I wanted to also learn a little bit about Dott from your point of view as a founding member of Dott. What makes Dott so much different than other operators that are operating? Obviously, Dott is one of the 3 or 4 operators that were selected by Paris a few years ago after a long selection process that's focused on the quality and focused on how you operate and so on. So obviously you're one of the top operators. However, can you explain a little bit in short terms what makes Dott so special? Maybe you can relate to other cities that you are operating in. I know in Brussels, people really like the way Dott operates. Maybe I can also, we can discuss that later on, but people really like the way you operate there in Brussels.
Yeah, actually the user satisfaction in Brussels is very strong, so that we have a strong leadership there, so super happy. And it was our first city, so very attached.
And the city is also happy, I think.
Yeah. And so I think the key differentiation when we created the company is to become a very responsible operator since the day one. So what does it mean? It means first, having all operations done in-house. So the recharge, the repair, the maintenance, the overall maintenance, everything done in-house. So no outsourcing, no juicer. Since the beginning, it was a strong value when we created the company. To refocus, so first focus on operations, of course, in-house operations. To find the most relevant hardware. So really built for this shared usage. So the first hardware generation we had, so back in Jan 2018, lasted 4 years. and still in operations in Poland, for instance, where they are refurbished. So yeah, focus on the long-lasting hardware, really built for this usage. And 3, I will say, bit more careful start. So no growth at all costs. Let's focus on a few big cities like Brussels, Paris, Lyon, Turin at that time. Let's make it sustainable, profitable, useful for people, and then let's scale. That's very careful growth, I would say.
Okay, but that strategy also means that you need to make some initial investments when you need to hire local people, for example. It costs a lot of money when you need to do your operations yourself locally, the warehouse and so on, the durability of the scooters. I assume when you were selected for Paris, you decided to put some investment in the city itself to make sure that your service has the quality that you always want to obtain, right? So you did have to put a lot of investment in the city of Paris, I assume.
Yeah, we invested a lot, as you mentioned, in the warehouse. It's a 2,000 square meters warehouse, so it's a big one. Actually, we found this warehouse, I think it was in March 2019, and we still have it. Now we have 3 warehouses actually in Paris, one in the south, one in the north, and one in the center. We invested in people, so mechanics, patrollers, drivers, etc. So in total in Paris now it's 200 people working day and night, 7 days a week to maintain the service, both for the e-scooters and for the e-bikes, because now we have e-bikes as well in Paris, which is also the case in Brussels and a few other cities like Rome, London, and so on.
Yeah, that actually also illustrates the other aspects of e-scooters that e-scooter companies bring to a city. In your case, for example, if Dott would not be able to operate in Paris anymore, those people would also lose their job and lose their livelihoods, right? So there will be a bigger impact than just the scooters that disappear. Also, jobs would disappear.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So,
there's a big impact for users, so people who are using the service every day. There's also an impact for non-users, because then people will use other means of transportation, starting with the metro, but also private cars, private scooters, or private mopeds or taxi. And there's also, of course, an impact for us as a company and for our employees, for sure. But also for the overall industry. There's a big impact for everyone, actually.
Now, let's discuss Paris. This is an article from 2019.
Yeah.
And the mayor and her policy has always been making a 15-minute city, and the way they invested in the road infrastructure, the way they welcomed the electric scooters. This is a quote, as you can see here, from the city. So they mentioned back then that they favor anything that contributes to decarbonized mobility and to a modal shift from cars to other forms of transport, such as scooters and bicycles. This is also seen in their investments that they have been doing since then.
Yeah.
And above that, it says that all the newcomers are drowned by the mayor transport policy since her election. She has been encouraging the growth of soft mobility, so walking, biking, and scooters as one of the priorities, right?
Yeah.
Now, fast forward to today, a few years later, having had a few operators that were qualified to operate do the pilots. I assume the pilot was a success. However, we will go into that. Is there something that might have changed their minds maybe during the process of the pilots?
No, but I first to come back to the policy of the Mayor Hidalgo and the city of Paris. I think there's no big change on that. I think the goal is still first to remove cars, and two to reduce air and noise pollution. So I think the policy has not changed, and I think the e-scooters, shared e-scooters, especially shared e-scooters, can play a big role in that policy, and that's why banning shared e-scooters will be a bit absurd based on this policy. Regarding the vote itself, it's difficult for me to say because I'm not in the backstage of the city hall. So I think the question will be more for the mayor and the deputy mayor. But I feel that there's a lot of debate between pros and cons of the shared e-scooters. And in the end, Mayor Hidalgo wants to ask Parisians who are really confronted to shared e-scooters every day, either they are users or non-user, what they need, what they want. So I think in the end, this is the reason of the vote. It will be one of the first time she's asking Parisians to vote for something of their daily life. She did it in the past for the budget, for the city budget, but this will be the first time for mobility and daily life.
Okay, well, it's of course nice to have the opinion of the people, right? However, it's a bit surprising that the vote, that the vote maybe should have happened before the pilot, or maybe it's good that there was a pilot so that people could have tried it, and now they know the value that scooters add, and now they can make an educated guess, I assume.
Yeah, actually, it was much more than a pilot because it was started with a 2-year contract, so from September 2020 to September 2022. And then we got an extension because of the COVID, so it was the first 6 months extension. And now that she announced the vote mid-Jan, we have an extension of the contract until end of August. So in the end, it will be almost 3-year contract. And today, if you look at some figures, you can see that e-scooters, it's not a gadget. Shared e-scooters is not a gadget. It's really a real means of transportation for Parisians. We have more than 400,000 people using it every month. So it's not that small. It's quite a lot.
No.
We have done last year, we did more than 18 million rides with a 60% growth versus the year before. It's sustainable, it's profitable, it's useful for people, it's more and more safe. So I think, I think e-scooters have found their place in the mobility solution today.
Are those trips that are done by people who go to work, for example, people who take the metro and then the last mile they might use an e-scooter, or people who go for a lunch to a restaurant during their working hour, or is it done by students just for fun? Or as you mentioned, it really has a key goal to use the e-scooter, so to either go to work or to go to dinner or something like that.
Scooters, shared e-scooters are more and more popular, meaning we have a lot of use cases. So it's difficult to sum up with only one use case, but of course we have daily commutes. So people using it to go to work, to go to university. And just to give you a figure on that, I think the average distance per trip is 2.8 kilometers in Paris. So it's really huge, actually. We have also a lot of people using it to move around the city, from the train station to their office, etc. But also to go out for leisure, to go to the bar, to go to a restaurant, etc. Talking about the riders, 70% of the people are below 35 years old, and 30% are students. We are around 30 to 40% women, and we have more and more senior people using it. So that's, in the end, a much more popular service versus at the beginning.
Yeah, that's quite interesting that you were able to achieve so many rides in only a few years, right? Because that means that maybe there was a need for these scooters before you arrived, and now you were able to build up this usage. So I guess when there's a ban of e-scooters, that need for the short-term distances of the 2 kilometers or whatever will need to be shifted somewhere else.
Yeah,
maybe public transports, or what do you think?
Yeah, actually, the City Hall did a research in spring 2022, and if you look at the figures of modal shifts, 34% will use public transportation, so mostly metro or bus. Then 19% will use either private cars, private moped, or taxi or ride-hailing, and 12% will use a bike, either private or shared.
Okay. And I think last year, since we are discussing bikes, I think VLEP had around 44 million
Yeah,
rides, I believe, something like
exactly.
that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So that's also a huge number, right?
Yeah, if you compare,
Do you think?
45 million rides for Velib and 18 million rides for Dott, Lime, and Tier.
Yeah, exactly. So, do you think there's still space for adding free float e-bikes, for example? Are the VLEP bikes e-bikes or just traditional
You
bikes?
have both, actually. You have
Yeah.
mechanical and e-bikes, and you have it's a docking system. So you have stations all over the place in Paris. So you have to go to a station to lock your bike.
How do you see the progress of the bike share, the free floating bike share progressing? Already having like VLEP in the city, with such a huge usage.
Yeah, actually, they're reaching quite a cap. So I think it's important if we want to make soft mobility more and more popular in Paris and more used. I think it's important to not to reduce one of the means of transportation, but to multiply the means of transportation. So that's why shared scooters, shared e-bikes, such as Dott, Lime, and Tier, can really complement the Velib solution. Not just for Paris
Yep.
intramuros, but also for the suburbs, for instance.
Now, I would like to discuss some challenges that you might have encountered during this, not really a pilot, but your operations in Paris. Paris is a huge city. Obviously, the public transport is widely used. The metro is heavily used, well known. But what about the vandalism? What about the early challenges that were in Paris, for example, when you launched? I guess not everybody was happy to see e-scooters, because we see some issues happening in Brussels, but also in Paris when it comes to parking of e-scooters, right? I think that is a main issue that maybe we should also discuss. Is that an issue or a challenge that's happened during the?
It was a challenge at the beginning, but today, honestly, it's not a big challenge. So vandalism at the beginning. So we calculate vandalism with the loss rate, what we call the loss rate. It was around between 5 to 10% at the beginning when we launched, for instance, in Paris. And today, in Paris, but also the case in Brussels or Lyon, for instance, it's below 1% per month.
Wow.
I mean, the monthly loss rate. So, of course, we still need to be careful on that, but it's not a big challenge today. And this is because of, one, the hardware being more and more robust. It's also because of our operations, because now we need really to operate well. We are super reactive when there's an issue. And also the behavior of riders, because now it's really, it's more and more integrated in the city, meaning that with also the restricted parking, you don't have any more free floating. You have to you can't park where you want. You have to park in dedicated parking slots. Also, that shared scooters are much more accepted by the general population, so less vandalism in the end.
This actually shows that you came from 10 or 5% to almost zero in a short period of time. This shows actually the innovation of the industry and how you were able to pivot fast and to change and to adapt to challenges in order to provide a better quality or a better service, right? Is there anything else or another challenge where you were able to pivot or change fast in order to provide a good quality or a better quality, except the vandalism? Obviously, the parking issue, you also had to learn fast and adjust and making sure that they were not able to park everywhere as well.
Yeah, I think the three main challenges we have are first parking, and when we say parking, is also integration into the public space. So here, with restricted parking, as we have in more and more cities, and I think Paris was a strong leader in that area. Now we have 96% of scooters which are well parked at any time. So yeah, in the end, it's also better respect for all the public space users. Second challenge, and that's not just for us, but it's for the overall mobility providers, it's safety. So that's why here it's important to educate riders and keep education in the app, in situ, etc. Also to have more and more robust scooters hardware, and also to define some features also to prevent from accidents. Like now we have the ID check, so we can control that people below 18 years old cannot use the scooters, etc. So that we also reduce the risk of accident. And the third challenge is sustainability. So the lifespan of scooters is super important. It was a key topic, a key focus for us since the beginning. And this week we announced an amazing project in Lyon to move to double actually the lifespan of scooters from 3 years to 7 years, using the same fleet to refurbish the fleet, so that in the end we can also reduce by half our carbon emissions.
And collaboration is also very important in this industry, right? Collaboration with the city, obviously, but also collaboration with the local businesses or even local charities and wherever you operate, because the e-scooters or the e-bikes are part of their community, right? So it's important to collaborate. How does Dott collaborate with the local community, for example? Are there any activities that you conduct? Obviously, by hiring local people, it's already an important thing that you contribute back to the community, right?
Exactly.
And the good quality is also a good thing, the durability. But are there any other things, for example, working with disabled people or investing in making it more accessible for people who are disabled, for example?
You mentioned collaboration on employment, so super important for us. Of course, collaboration with cities. The lifespan case I mentioned for Lyon, it's a strong collaboration between us and the deputy mayor of Lyon, forcing us to really keep the same fleet and encouraging us to maintain and to refurbish. So super important collaboration with cities, both elected people, both the technical services. 3, I will say, collaboration between and within the mobility ecosystem. So in Paris, we are joining forces with Lime and Tier to improve the service. So I mentioned the ID check. We have also the ID plates. So now on every scooter, there's a plate so that we can help the police to enforce. So super important, and this is a joint collaboration between the 3 operators, but also working with the RATP, for instance, in Paris. Now the 3 services are embedded into the RATP, so the public transportation app, so that you can see, unlock, and use a scooter directly from the app. So a lot of technical, legal work on that. And also, as you say, working with communities, working with local events, also to provide our service so that people can go to or can go back from the event. So a lot of local. Actually, we're a local service, so we have to work with local communities.
Exactly. And also, again, regarding the pilots, I assume when you were selected for the pilots, there were some quality measures that had to be met to qualify the pilots, whether it was a success or not afterwards.
Actually, it was not a pilot with a very strong KPIs. It was a 2-year contract and moving to a 3-year contract. But on a monthly basis, we are sending a lot of data to the city hall regarding the usage. So is it used and useful? Regarding safety, regarding also the sustainability with the loss rate I mentioned. So every month we are sending data regarding the loss rate and evolution, trend, etc., and also the lifespan of e-scooters. And also in the end, it's also a matter of the acceptation by the general population. On that, it's difficult to measure on a very regular cadence, but we did some polling with Ipsos, which is a polling institute. We did that in September 2022, and 88% of Parisians, not users, Parisians above 18 years old, saw that shared scooters have become really part of their mobility and daily life, even if they're not using it. So it's important to show that now shared scooters, it's part of the daily life of people.
That's quite interesting. We will share that survey and the notes of the podcast as well, because it's important to know that. As a kind of like one of the last questions, Dott also has had a pilot in the United Kingdom, which was also not an easy market to enter at first, because obviously they first wanted to make sure that the people wanted to have the e-scooters, and they wanted to put some regulations in place, I guess, which they are still working on at this part. But I think Voy has been doing good as well there, and in the United Kingdom I saw. Congrats to Voy. Lime as well, Dott as well. Can you maybe explain a little bit about how the operations or pilots are going in the United Kingdom? And maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that as well, because it's also a bit, not an easy market to enter, just as Paris, I assume.
Yeah, actually, so we are operating in London, so I can talk about London in the UK. So actually, London quite follow Paris leadership, so they limited the number of operators to 3. They put a cap to the size of the fleet overall, and then they put restricted parking with parking zone, as in Paris. Also, the speed is limited, etc. So, in the end, it's quite similar to Paris, and I think Paris was quite a good leader for that. London City, after 1 year experimentation, decided to renew and to extend the experimentation. So that's why we are quite happy to continue, and again to improve the service on safety, on sustainability, on parking. I think in London, what we can improve is having more and more parking zones. In Paris, you have a parking slot every 100 meters. In London, it's not yet the case. So we need to improve that so that the user experience in the end also is quite optimal. So still a lot of things to do. And I think the collaboration with TfL, Transport for London, is great. We are also working with the borough in London, so not just with the overall TfL organization, but with each borough to improve the service. And there's a will to improve and to optimize the service, so which is great.
Congratulations for renewing the contract. As the last question that I have, what do you think the impact would be if there would be a potential ban in Paris? What do you think the impact would be on other cities like the United Kingdom or Brussels, who might look to Paris to see what Paris will decide? Do you think there will be any impact or any effects on those markets compared to in terms of the regulators on how they will handle e-scooters?
Actually, if you look at the European cities, more and more EU capitals or large cities are regulating this service. It's the case in London that we mentioned. It's also the case in Madrid. We selected 3 operators, so Dott, Lime, and Tier, 2 months ago. It's the case in Rome. They are about to announce a tender winners. It's the case in Warsaw. It's the case in almost all cities. So let's see what happens in Paris. But I would say that, most of the new cities are regulating and accepting this kind of mobility with a lot of benefits. But the idea is to regulate so that it's not a mess. It's accepted by the general population. You have a relevant and reliable operators to maintain the service, and so that it's useful for everyone.
Well, thank you very much for coming on the podcast and sharing your side of the message. It was important to understand the durability that Dott is creating, and also the other operators, and obviously the 80% that of the people who see it as part of their life. So thank you very much for your time. And I wish you all the best. And I hope everybody goes to vote on the 2nd of April. I hope all those 80% of the people will go to vote, and then it's an easy thing, right?
Yeah, let's see. If you live in Paris, of course, on Sunday, April 2, please go and vote in favor. Thank you so much, Constantine. Okay. It was a pleasure to discuss with you.